the Java version is right in order to run the software that I wanted to do at the very end last time. And if this doesn't work properly, I'll just switch over to the laptop. So anyway, so the program that I want to run, oh, I did need to update. Okay, so sudo apt upgrade. The program that I'm wanting to show you guys is called Logisim, and essentially what it's going to let us do, you know what? Why is that froze? Okay. Oh, I think I just managed to crash. There we go. Okay. So let's go to downloads. Let's see if I've got it there. Yeah. Okay, well, oops. That's not what I meant to press. Okay, so the program that that I'm showing you guys is called Logisim Evolution, and it's freeware. You can download it for your own computers, um, and kind of play with it. So it's this one here, and then you want to. There's a Windows version, a Mac version, and because I'm on this Raspberry Pi, I have to use the sort of universal Java version. And so that's what I'm doing, is just running a few updates so that it will actually run correctly, hopefully. Um, and so what the point of this is, so just here's a couple of screenshots real quick to kind of get the idea, um, is we can build a full-blown computer in this thing and sort of look architecturally as to how you actually build circuit components that do the kinds of things that you would need to do if you wanted to build a computer. So we'll start with sort of the simplest kind of things that you need, and we'll do this kind of with an eye for how this Brookshire machine works, right? So we've got this machine code stuff that's for a made-up processor. It doesn't exist in the world like in a physical form. Um, and we've got some simulators online. And in fact, we actually found there's a new one out there that actually I think you guys will like a lot better than the first one. So I'll show you that in a minute. Um, and so you're free to use either one. Um, let's see. But like, for example, if our computer is able to do addition of two integers, like a circuit has to do that. How do you build a circuit that does addition? Okay. Or any of the other sorts of things. How do you build a circuit that does rotation of bits? Okay. So that's sort of the kind of stuff that we want to start looking at. And then I also want to sort of talk a little bit about more about the MOSFET stuff, which was what we kind of looked at the very end last time on the chalkboard, right? So at the very beginning of the class, right, we talked about all the different parts of a computer. We took a bunch of old machines apart. You guys found all the components, and then put them back together. Okay, so we're going to sort of zoom in, if you will, on most of the processors or the actual chip components of all the different parts you saw. And um, when we so then a couple days later, right, we hand out the buckets. You've got the breadboards. You're wiring up little circuits, and we were using transistors. They were the transistor type we were using were BJTs. Okay, so we had two of them, NPN and PNP, and I think for the most part we really just used the NPNs. But we were able to build up some simple logic circuits, right? So we were able to build an AND gate, we were able to build an OR gate, we were able to build a NOT gate. We could build, therefore, if we've got those three, we can build NAND and NORs. And then you guys for that project built an XOR gate. The particular implementation that I had you guys do took 5 transistors to do it. Okay. All right. But those kinds of transistors are not the only ones. There's lots of other different types that use different quantum physics voodoo to actually work. And the MOSFETs are the ones, the sort of type that now is used in pretty much 99 per point whatever percent of integrated circuits. Okay. And now how these things are produced is quite complicated. They're basically produced by, so imagine you've got like a block of silicon, and if you expose it to different chemicals, you can deliberately introduce impurities into it, so it's not just silicon. Okay, if you bake it at high temperature, you can make it so it oxidizes the top layer into silicon dioxide. Okay, and maybe you want that. And so let's say you bake it at high temperature to get silicon dioxide. Okay, and then you expose parts of it to like really high intensity ultraviolet light. And then you bathe the product in hydrofluoric acid. And what actually happens is it etches away the parts that had been exposed to the light. So you can sort of do, for lack of a better way of putting it, it's almost like reverse 3D printing in a way, right? So how does 3D printing work, right? You're depositing material to build something up. All right, well, so what about if in addition to adding things to build them up, you could also subtract other things as you go, right? Using acids and ultraviolet light and all kinds of, stuff. Hydrofluoric acid, by the way, not something to mess with because has anybody in chemistry? Yeah? Have you guys talked about hydrofluoric acid? What would happen if it got on your hands? Yeah, it seep into your skin and melt your bones from the inside out. Okay, pretty nasty stuff, right? Um, so yeah, so obviously this is done under very, very controlled conditions. Um, but yeah, so the MOSFET stuff. So hopefully this update is finished and will work. Oh, not quite. Well, let's just see if it'll work this morning. That would make me a very happy panda. Okay. All right. Well, then screw that. I'll just do it on my laptop. So let me just switch over all the video here. All right. So we're going to do room computer. I'm going to minimize this. I'm going to go to full screen. And then I'm going to open up Logisim. Okay. So the MOSFET stuff. So I'm going to put down here, so I've got this sort of window, and under wiring, I'll see things here called transistor, okay? And I'm going to put 4 of them down, and then let me see if I can zoom this in a little bit. Let's see. Oh, here it is. There we go. Okay, so I'll zoom it in a little bit so it's a little bit easier to see. Okay, so these transistors, right, these two are p-types, and I know that because they've got the little loop on them. And these two are also p-types, but I want to change them to n-type, okay? So these are the other kind. All right, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put, let's see, I want input, output. I'm going to put a couple of buttons here. Okay, and then I'm going to start wiring something up. Okay, and this is going to be a little bit messy, but we'll make it work. Okay, I also need to have a power source, and I need to have ground. And then I'm going to connect this to ground, this to this. I'm going to connect one input to this guy and this guy. I'm going to connect the other input to this guy, and I guess I'll just wire it up over here, this guy. Okay. I'm going to connect power to each of these, and then I'm going to connect this dude and kind of snake it around to here. And then this guy I need to also connect to there. And then I'm going to take, let's see, my output, I'll put a light to represent that. I'm going to put here. Okay. So what I have done here is I've built, this is a Nand gate, okay, using a complementary structure. All right, so I've got two N-type transistors and they're wired in series, so one directly after the other. That looks just like what we did with our transistors on breadboards when we made an AND gate, okay? And I've put the output of it, let's make sure I didn't screw this up. Oh, I put the output in the wrong spot. I'm sorry. This should, I mean, that needs to be deleted. It should be connected here. Okay. Sorry. I've put the output before the pair of transistors, right? Which we saw that if you moved the output from after the series transistors to before the series transistors, that gave you AND versus NAND, okay? And then, so I've got those two transistors in series, and sort of the rule for this, the rule for how you construct these is for every N-type transistor, you have a P-type transistor, right? They come in sort of pairs. This is the C of complementary, okay? And anytime you have a pair of NMOS transistors that are in series, you use an equivalent set of PMOS transistors in parallel, okay, and vice versa. Okay, so they sort of have complementary structures. All right, now the reason that that's like that is basically because of, well, logic. So how many of you guys have heard of De Morgan's laws before? No? Yeah? Okay, well, let me draw a picture and you guys will see why it sort of makes sense. All right, so if I have A and B, and I think of this in sort of like the Venn diagram kind of way, what is A and B in terms of the Venn diagram? If A is the first circle and B is the second circle? Huh? Yeah, it's the stuff in the middle, okay? Both circles would be or B, okay? All right, so, right, and you guys all, I mean, you should have seen Venn diagrams good as in elementary school, I would hope. We? No. Okay. All right, so what's the opposite of this? So what's not A and B? Well, it'd be everything I didn't shade, right? Okay, so not A and B, if I were to draw it, so let's say not A and B, would be, because there's outsides of the box too, right? It would be literally everything shaded except for that little sliver in the middle, okay? Oh, and this stuff too. Okay, so basically everything except that sliver, right? It's the opposite. Does that make sense? Okay, but this is the same as not A or not B. Okay, and now stare at the Venn diagram for a second, and I think you'll see why, right? What's not A? Everything outside the A circle. What's not B? Well, similarly, everything outside the B circle. Okay, and so not A or not B would be everything that's outside the A circle or outside the B circle. Okay, and is that going to catch everything with the exception of the little sliver in the middle? Yeah, okay, so they're the same thing. All right, so you see how and or are kind of complementary in the sense that, well, in that sense, right? So that relationship I wrote up at the top right, not A and B, is the same as not A or not B. That's one of De Morgan's laws. Okay. The other one, you guys can guess. What do you think it is? Not A or B is equivalent to, so let me write it. Okay, so that was one of them. What's the second one? What do you think? If you're just going on pure pattern recognition, yeah. Okay, it'd be the just the stuff outside both circles. Okay, so the box, if you will, like it'd be like, imagine if this was like cookie dough, and you pulled the cookie dough out. It'd be, you know, sort of the leftover bit that you would then roll up and make another cookie with or whatever, right? Okay, so you see how and or kind of have this sort of complementary relationship to each other? Yeah. Well, there we go. Okay. All right. So let's look at how this thing actually works. So I've got my two inputs here, right? And right now, because I'm not pressing them, they're both off. So you see how the dark green and the light green wires are on, dark green wires are off. Okay. Or really, what does on and off mean when we're dealing with an electronic circuit? Because that's too, maybe too clean. One, green, light green means high voltage. Dark green means very low voltage. Okay. Now, low voltage doesn't have to be 0 volts. It could be like 0.1 volts or something. So this is sort of one of the lies about digital electronics, is that really, like if you look at the voltage range, like let's say plus 5 volts to 0 volts, right? Anywhere in here is a logical zero, and anywhere kind of up here is a logical one, and anywhere in here is sort of the bad zone that you hope that your voltage is never in between there. Okay, and so you have to design your circuit in such a way that basically the high end of the range you treat as a logical one, and the low end is a logical zero. Okay, but it's not just magically always on and off, right? The world is never that clean. Okay, so let's look at how this thing works. If I start hitting the button, like if I click this button, oh, and I need my finger tool to do this, right? So if I click this button, right, what changes? Yeah, so one of my inputs becomes high. Does my output, what is my output? Yeah, it remains the same, okay? And if I hit the other one, same behavior. All right, now this is impossible to do because I only have one of the little finger tools. So let me actually change this to, um, um, let me actually change this to using this kind of switch. Okay, it's the same principle, except this time I can flip each switch individually, right? So I can turn one on, I can turn the other on, and I could turn both on. Okay, so if we were to construct the truth table for what we just did, okay, there are 4 combinations of inputs, right? both off, both on, and one or the other. And what are we seeing in terms of the output? Okay, so if I had 0 and 0, what was the output? On, okay? If I had 1 and 0 or 0 and 1, what did I get? Also on. And if they were both on, what did I get? Okay, what logic gate is this? What logic gate of the 7 basic ones that we studied has this as its truth table? It's a NAND gate. I did, I'm sure, but this is a teaching technique called check for understanding, right? Which is, yeah, I told you, but that doesn't mean that it actually, you know, didn't go in one ear and out the other. Okay, which is why I did it, Cody, because I've been teaching for a long time, my friend, and if there's anything to learn, especially when you're teaching a class at 8 in the morning, where the hell is my Gatorade? Didn't I bring my Gatorade in here? I bet you I left it in the dang car. So, okay, whatever. This is why I need more coffee. In fact, maybe next semester, I'm going to have a WISE job that I advertise, and the student's job will be to, at 7:55, to arrive at my classroom with my coffee. Next semester? Well, let me counteroffer with the C+. What do you think then? Yeah. You first law of negotiation, right? Is you want to shoot high, but not too high to make them think you're not serious. So, right. All right. So, um, anyway, so this is a NAND gate, right? And now I know the way I had to draw it in here, just because of the way the gates are oriented, I can turn them and make this look pretty. But so let me draw this in maybe a slightly more reasonable looking approach. So, all right, so let's see, we want, so here's one of our transistors, and we'll connect A to it, and here's our other one, and we'll connect B to it, and then we'll go ground here, and then we've got our output here, and then we've got, let's see, how do I want to do this? Like that. Okay, so I've kind of rotated the orientation of these things just to make it so that the wires aren't having to cross each other and stuff. But that basic structure, okay, is equivalent to what we've wired up here in terms of the what's connected to what. But I think you guys would agree that the arrangement and the way in which I drew it on the board is a heck of a lot cleaner looking than how I did it here. And I could clean that up, but it's not worth the time right now. Yeah. It could, but there's a technical reason why I won't do that. Okay, because if I did, what's the point of the two transistors up at the top, the PMOS ones? They're kind of like not used in a sense. Okay, and so actually, what I'll do instead is, I mean, so Kiani's question, right, is if I move the output, could I turn this into an AND gate instead? Okay, and yeah, I could, but I'm not going to do it that way. What I'm going to do is build another kind of circuit, okay, using only a single pair of these things called an inverter, okay, so a NOT gate. And the NOT gate, I think you guys will not be surprised, haha, how I do it. No. I worked at Kohl's. I wasn't a comedian, right? Actually, I did have some fun when I was working at Kohl's because, um, well, particularly when I was cashiering, right? At the customer service desk, it was mostly all business, right? And honestly, 99% of the people that came up to the customer service desk, things were completely routine. This didn't fit, he didn't like it, I just need to swap it for something else, or it's the wrong thing, I need to return it. No big deal, right? Absolutely routine transactions. Then there were the 1% that were, Karens, um, coming by. And this is before we had the term Karens, right? But yeah, so we had that. But when I was on the cash registers, one of the things, I mean, has anybody else worked cash register in retail? Yeah, where? I'm sorry. Okay, so selling what? Okay. Did you have a store credit card? No. Okay, but if you go to Kohl's or pretty much any other big department store, right, when you get to the register, what's the first thing that they ask you? Exactly, right? They're going to foist the membership program, the rewards program, get your email and phone number so they can just bombard you with text messages. But in particular, they want you to sign up for one of the store credit cards. Why do they want you to sign up for one of the store credit cards? Huh? Well, you'll spend money, but, huh? Yeah, you do. Okay, which is how they entice you into it. Okay, but why is it that the companies want you to do this? Oh, do you have any idea what the APR is on a store credit card? It's like 20 something percent. Okay, that's a lot. So they're a great deal if you pay them off each month. Okay, they're not such a great deal if you don't. Okay, and in fact, some of these department stores make just as much money off of the interest from their credit cards as they do from actually selling the merchandise in the first place, which is kind of crazy if you think about it, right? I mean, Cody, you look astonished. Okay, well, yeah, exactly. So yes, it meant that we had to push credit cards, and every now and then there would be like stuffed animals and stuff at the cash register, basically as the temptation items, kind of like candy bars and stuff. And so I remember one summer it was like a bunch of like sea creatures, so we had like sea turtles and whales and dolphins and stuff. And so I'd write a little sign and put a little whale next to it and be like, Cole's charge, it's a whale of a deal. And or the dolphin and be like, it's a card with a porpoise. Um, huh? No, sadly. Um, yeah, with a porpoise. Yeah. No. Yeah. I was doing dad jokes before they were cool. So anyway, all right. So what we do is we actually, instead of doing what Kiani suggested, which is moving the output, is we just add something to the circuit. Okay. Namely, so the circuit I've drawn over here is kind of the basically what the Nand gate would look like if I only had a single pair, one NMOS and one PMOS, and that thing will function as an inverter, okay? So whatever comes into the inverter, the opposite goes out, okay? And so what would I do to combine these to make an AND gate? I would take the output of the NAND gate and make that the input of my NOT gate, right? So what's not and, okay? Um, and by doing it that way, it preserves the rules about keeping the sort of design rule about keeping these things in pairs and having sort of a complementary role between the PMOS and the NMOS guys. And there's good electrical reasons why this is a good approach. Okay, but it's kind of hard to fabricate these things, and that's why it wasn't until the 80s or so that the fabrication techniques in terms of like, Intel and the other people that make actual chips were able to do this reliably, effectively, and cost efficiently, and have the performance be good and so on. Okay, but yeah, so there's good electrical reasons why this sort of pair rule is there. Okay, so right. So what we want to do then is sort of start to zoom out here and say, okay, if I can build NAND gates, and if we think, and you use your head, you could, without too much trouble, figure out how to build an OR gate, okay? And we've got an inverter. Well, if we've got AND, OR, NOT, and then also NAND and NOR, can we build XOR by combining these things in logical ways? Yes, okay? So now what we'll do is zoom out one level, if you will, and say, if I zoom out one level, okay, then and let me just make a new item here, right? If I zoom out one level, then I'm at the level of starting to put together gates like this. Okay, so I've got my AND and my OR gate. I've also got my XOR gate and my NAND and my NOR gate. Okay, and then of course I've also got my NOT gate. Okay, so those are in some sense the primitive 6, right? The one missing is not in XOR, but I can obviously get that by putting an XOR and a NOT together. Okay, so think about when you see an AND gate, right? If you build it with NPN transistors, you guys know what that circuit looked like. It was 2 NPN transistors wired in series, and we did that, okay? Its CMOS way of building it is what we drew up on the board or had the rat's nest earlier here on the last screen, okay? And so if we can if we figured out how to make individual ones of these things, now let's look at, well, what happens if we start combining these things in interesting ways? Okay, does that make sense? All right, so let's start actually with, um, probably, one of the most simple kind of circuits that we would need, which would be to do addition, okay? And so let me, over here, or actually I'll do it over there so I don't have to erase my beautiful CMOS stuff. Let's think about how addition works again, and then use that to kind of think about how we would construct the circuit to do it. Okay, so let me take two numbers, and just for the sake of demonstration, let me use 4-bit numbers instead of 8-bit. It's the same idea, just fewer bits, okay? All right, so let me write something down. Okay, and let's say I were to add these bitwise. Okay, so what would happen? 0 and 1 is 1, no carry. 1 and 1 is with the carry. 0 with the carry. 1 with the carry. Okay, all right, so the far right bit position, this one here, okay, there are 4 possibilities for how those how the bits were. We could have had both zeros, both ones, and then one of each, okay? So let's examine sort of each case and see what the output should be, and then we'll start to select the logical components to do that, okay? So if I have 0 and 0 and I add them, what do I get for my output? Well, there's really 2 outputs, right? What I write down, and then there's possibly a carry that goes over to the next bit position. Okay, so do you guys agree that there's really 2 outputs we need to worry about here, not one? The out, or the sum, which we actually write, and then the carry, which goes, and then we deal with that in the next bit position. Yes? Okay. All right, so all 4 combinations that we could have We could have 0, 1, 1, 0, and 1, 1. Okay, so in all four of these cases, what are the outputs and what are the carries? All right, so in these two, what do we get? Output of 1, carry of, okay. What do you mean? Oh, yeah. Okay, I'm sorry. I see what you mean. Yeah, these are the four possible cases for what could be inside the box, right? And so I'm not thinking of it as one big number. I'm thinking of the stuff over here as just those are each of the four independently different cases that we could have had. Yeah, okay. So yeah, does that, yeah, okay. Yeah, Owen's faster than I am. This is why I keep you around, Owen. You know, maybe I should make your job to bring me coffee every morning. Yeah, but he'll do it for, you know, whatever the college is paying him. So, you know, then the better part is that I'm not paying for it. The college is. Huh? Well, I don't know. I mean, maybe I could get in trouble for that. That's a quid pro quo. Well, true. I'm broadcasting it on the internet live right now, so somebody's already found out, right? Okay. If they're both ones, what's the out and what's the carry? The output is a 0 and the carry is a 1. Okay, so let's look at the output side of part of this, okay? And let me make here, let me put together, let's see, I want wiring. Actually, you know what? I'm going to do it this way. Okay, so let's say that these are my two, my two numbers that I'm adding together, okay? So if we concentrate on the output part, we need a logic gate that has that as its truth table. Does that remind you of any of them? It's off when either both inputs are off or both inputs are on, and it's on otherwise. Which gate is that? It's XOR. Okay. So then I'm going to connect these guys here. And because I'm incredibly anal, oh, damn it. Okay. And let me put some of these little lights. Okay. So that's my output, is to use an XOR gate. What about the carry gate that I need? So the carry, I only get a carry if both inputs are a 1, and I get zeros otherwise. Which gate is that? AND gate, okay? So the XOR gate gets me the sum, and the AND gate is going to get me the carry. Okay, so now let's test it. And I thought there was a way to put in text in here. Huh. No, I guess not. Oh, well, I guess I can label these things. So I can label this, where's the label? Label font, label, here we go. So let's call this sum, and let's call this carry, okay? All right, so if I then change these, 1 and 1 plus 0, sum of 1, carry of 0. Do it the other way. Does that jive? Yeah. And then if they're both 1, I get no sum but a carry. Okay. So this circuit is called a half adder. And I'll explain why the word half is involved there. But this does bitwise addition. Okay. And you see how by writing out the truth table and figuring out what it needed to do is how we were able to kind of deduce which gates would do the job for us. All right, now this one is obviously a very simple one. If it's more complicated, there's more work to do, okay? And in particular, with addition, that's only the far right bit position. What do we have to deal with in all the other bit positions that we don't have to deal with on the one on the right? I still have to add the 2 bits, right? And I still generate an output and a carry. But what's different this time? I might have a carry coming from the previous bit position, okay? So for this bit position, we can use a half adder. But for this bit position and all the subsequent ones, we have to use a full adder, okay? And the difference between them is that the full adder actually has a 3rd input. The 2 inputs are the 2 bits, and the 3rd input is the carry from the previous bit. Okay, so now we've got it's more complicated to keep track of, right? Because now we have to incorporate that carry from the previous bit along with what we've built so far. Okay, so what we'll end up having to do is to add 3 more gates to this in the correct way in order to generate an output, a carry, or a sum and a carry that would then go to the next bit position, okay? And so that's where we'll start, well, goodness, I guess first thing on Wednesday, since we're not going to do class Monday, okay? All right, so you kind of see how, in a sense, we're coming full circle here with what we've been learning. That makes me a happy panda. And speaking of which, if you hadn't already picked yours up from last time, I've got it. They're in my bag, so on your way out, grab it. And I will see you guys on Wednesday, right? Reminder, no class Monday, and don't expect me on campus until noon.